Okay, I'm going to get started. My name is Becky Neiman, and I'm a full-time audiobook producer and editor. And this event is geared towards authors who want to record their own audiobook, but don't have the technical wherewithal or are intimidated or need assistance to get through the process, because it actually is a pretty involved and can be a complicated process. So I offer the service of working with authors, working with people who are not skilled in home studio, home narration, and getting that in order, getting the studio set up, making sure the sound is right, and then helping complete the audiobook so it can be distributed and start earning you money. Now, why audiobooks? Well, audiobooks are a very large part of the publishing industry. In some ways, I've read that the audiobook industry is propping up parts of the publishing industry. The sales figures grow by double digits regularly. It's really an incredibly dynamic part of the publishing industry. And also, these audiobooks sell in perpetuity. So once you get an audiobook up there, you really, it will sell, whether you promote it or not. If you have a new product out, if you have a new book, of course, that's going to push things higher. But I have audiobooks that have been on Audible for over 10 years, and every month I get a check. So, or a deposit, let's say. But audiobooks sell and people love them. People are addicted to audiobooks. One person said there's never enough content on his outlet. So audiobooks sell to people because they listen when they're driving. I had one woman who told me that she drove cross country, and the only time there was peace in the car with her children was when there was an audiobook that they were all listening to. I have a friend who does art, and he always has to have an audiobook playing when he's doing his art. So audiobooks are really a great way to get your book out there and keep it out there. So I really encourage people to consider producing an audiobook. Now, my background is in commercial production. I'm on I say the bleeding edge of Gen X. I started a long time ago in production. I was in New York and I was working in the music industry. I worked for Sony Music, and then I went to Polygram and I produced commercials. I wrote commercials and I produced commercials. And what we did back then are 10-second spots, 15-second spots, 30-second spots. 60-second was a long spot. And in terms of commercials, we never went over 60 seconds. So I learned about the perfection of audio. I would sit in a studio, very nice studio, very well decorated, perfect surrounding, behind an engineer. So there would be the producer, the engineer, and then the narrator in a vocal booth. And we would spend a lot of time perfecting those 60 seconds, 30 seconds. And now that level of perfection is required for 30 hours or for 10 hours. The average audiobook is about 8 hours, but it requires that level of perfection because we're used to hearing that. Good audio production, I call it invisible because you don't think about it. It's just right. But if it's wrong, then there are problems. And bad audio or audio with distractions is going to take the listener out of the immersive experience that they're in. So when you listen to an audiobook, you're in that world. But if something happens, there's some distraction, or there's a noise, or there's too much breath, or there's too much mouth noise, or whatever it is, the magic is going to be, if not reduced, gone. And so audiobook and audio production is tricky, and it's very significant if you want to have a good final product that keeps your audience listening and involved. So I'm going to show a little commercial that I made recently, and it's a lot of fun for me now because I don't need to go into a studio and I don't need to deal with what we used to deal with to create a commercial. Now I did this myself. I wrote it. I hired people through the internet, and I was very pleased with the result. But it does give you an idea of my background, and also gives you a good idea of what why this is important, why I think sound is so important. Here we go.
Audio is more important than video. You can always insert a picture or graphic, but if the sound isn't right, your audience will tune out. And they won't even know why. There are many powerful forces that we can't see, but we can feel. Good audio is invisible. It just sounds right. Contact audiobookeditors.com, the audiobook production specialists.
Okay, so that is my feeling about sound. It's invisible, but we know when it sounds right. So what do you have to do to get to that point? What do you have to do to make, to get your sound to sound invisible? You're getting to make it disappear. So what you need, and I'm going to go through some basic steps. I'm not going to get into the real technical details, but just the basics. So step one is the room. This AI generated picture that I made is a really nice little studio. It has the foam, acoustic foam tiles in the front, has baffling fancy wood structures that help reduce echo. A carpet, I would say they need more carpet, but basically what you want in your room is it's called a dead sound. And what that means is you don't want reflection bouncing off the wall. You don't want to have reverb or echo. You want it to be flat, a pure signal. And to do that, there are various ways, but basically you want to create a soft room. You want to create a room when there are things called acoustic blankets. You want soft furniture. You can hang blankets on, if you have a shoji screen, bookshelves are good, carpeting, anything to get that room to reduce the echo of rooms. And there's a lot of other techniques to know about, but basically the room is very important. It's the basis, because a lot of audio, it's about room tone. And you can't have a change in the room tone. You have to have a consistent room tone. And that means there's a sound to the room. Every room has a sound. If you switch rooms, the sound of the room, the quiet, is going to change. And so you have to get a good space, a quiet space, but also a space that you can work with, where you can, if you have windows, you have to cover the windows. Any kind of reflective surface is bad. Now, when I was at the Tale of the Pup recently, and there was a plaque next to the bathroom that Jim Morrison recorded "Light My Fire" in this bathroom. Now, is that true? I don't know. I don't know if it's true. But it's interesting because, yes, in a bathroom, you will get that reverb sound. You will get all that reflection that we don't want in audiobooks. So the room is the most important first part. And that takes some setup. And that also would take doing tests, sound tests of small recordings. And then I would analyze them and say, well, it still sounds a little off. Let's try this. But basically, the room is number one in your recording setup. Now, there are all kinds of options. I just did a quick search on Google, and all these products popped up. Some of them could be quite good. There's something called a shield that goes behind your microphone. That helps. They have acoustic tiles, foam wall tiles. There's portable vocal studios. Here's one for $400. There's a booth they sell for $5,000. And $5,000, I've heard a lot about people who get people who are professional narrators will have a $5,000 booth in their home. But you could do it with what you have at home. You don't necessarily have to invest a lot into creating a good room. And what we're going for in the work that I do with authors is we're never going to get to the studio, but we can make a very good simulation at home. And what I'm always striving for is what I call the baseline good audio. You want to get a bass, and then we can bring it to excellent. Now, I've worked with bad audio that I've brought up to, let's say, we call it spec, so it meets the specifications of Amazon. However, you're never going to take really bad audio and make it sound great. You have to have a baseline because there's only so much that can be done in post-production without damaging the original signal. So you really want to try to get the basics right. Now, after you have sort of set up your room, there's the microphone. And there's a variety of microphones that you can choose from. Also, again, you can spend a lot of money. You don't have to spend a lot of money. I'm not going to go through the technical aspects of microphones because there's a lot there and some stuff that is beyond me. However, there are two types of connectors nowadays. There's the professional connector called XLR, and then there's USB. You've probably seen this mic, whether you know it or not. This is the favorite mic of hotshot YouTube channels and podcasters. This is the mic. The Shure SM7B is the one that is very popular, and I think it shows you're quite serious. I don't have one. However, it is XLR, and when you deal with XLR, you're going to have a good sound. It's going to be superior to USB, but you need an additional piece. You need an interface to go from that into your computer. So that brings up the price a bit, but still, these are affordable. This is not out of the realm of possibilities. You're going to be spending $400 to $500 for those two pieces of equipment. Now, does it make a difference? I have compared USB microphones, a high-end USB, to a lower-end XLR, and I still thought the XLR sounded a bit better, a little richer tone. But it's not necessary. I work with USB mics, people who record on USB mics all the time now, and it's absolutely fine for audiobook production. This is the Blue Yeti, is sort of the, like I say, the base model that a lot of people use, and it has a good sound, very reliable. I would also say if you use a USB mic, you should probably try to get a computer nowadays that has more modern connections. A USB-C is the more modern connection, but we can configure anything. That is, there are no real limits on what we can do. We can work with the low cost mics. We can figure out the old computers. It's all basically doable. Just some is better than other. The new technologies allow things to configure very seamlessly. It's much easier to make things happen and have no real technical problems if you have more updated equipment. But like I said, I've worked with everything. This mic I worked with in the XLR, using the XLR connection, and it's like $100 for that model. This model with both connectors is $200. Excellent mic. Either way, I think it's a great mic, and also gives you that flexibility of XLR and USB. So that's my mic segment. Now, when you do audiobooks, you need headphones. And why do you need headphones? Because you have to hear all the imperfections. You have to hear the problems. You have to know if your levels are too high. All of this is necessary. You have to have it under almost a microscope. So you have to have a good set of headphones. I use studio monitor headphones, and what amazes me is I think the computer speakers nowadays have, whatever technology they're using, audio sounds really good through my computer speakers, but when I put on my headphones, suddenly all the imperfections come out. So you want to create sound. You want to create sound that's going to work on every conceivable way people are listening. So if they're in the car speakers, but if somebody has a high-end set of headphones, you do not want to disappoint them. So headphones are important for the narrator, but especially, of course, in post-production. There's also something called a pop filter or pop screen, and that diminishes the chance that you're going to blow out the mic with something like a P. Now, this mic I have, I think, has some kind of built-in electronics, because I never seem to have the problems with this mic, which is called a Revelator. But the pop filter necessary to keep your audio as clean as possible and make less work for the editor who has to try to correct that stuff later on. Software. Software has, there's every range of prices with software. Some is very expensive. There's moderate, free. I recommend for a first-time narrator that use the free software. There's a program called Audacity that's free, and it's open source. Really amazing software in terms of the effectiveness of the recording, but also the various effects and repair plugins. It's really good software, Audacity. And there are two ways to record as a narrator. You can do what's called roll record, which is the easiest, where you just record, let it roll. You have to do a retake. You do a retake. You clap. People clap between retakes so that the editor sees a spike in the waveform. Some people use a animal training clicker. But basically, you let it roll, you read, you make a mistake, you start from the beginning of the sentence or a natural pause, and then you move on. And that's an easy way of doing things. Now we move on to you as a narrator. So we went through the room, we went through the microphones, went through the software possibilities, and now we're getting to you, the author, the person who's going to be doing this. Now, mouth noise. That's number one with post-production people. Mouth noise is very important to try to reduce it as much as possible. Now, as the bleeding edge of Gen X, I need to hydrate a lot more than I used to. Hydrating for recording, you have to start well in advance. So you have to work on lubricating your mouth, your vocal cords, your tonsils, whatever it is. And you have to drink a lot of water, or drink. You can also, there are people who say eat sour apples, I've heard, but there's all kinds of tricks out there for how to reduce mouth noise. The final and most important part of this, and I didn't add the cat to this visual. The cat was added by the AI. But the most important part of an author reading their book is commitment to a schedule. Working on an audiobook is a very time-consuming process, and it's going to take, there's a learning curve, so it's going to take a lot longer in the beginning, but it also, no matter how much of an expert you are, you're going to need to make a schedule and set goals and try to reach those goals, and in audio books, the standard is a finished hour of audio. So how long of your reading will it take to make 1 hour of finished audio? So you might be recording for 4 hours, and that only amounts to 1 hour of finished audio. So let's say that's your ratio, you're a 4-to-1 ratio. Now, professionals are going to be less. But if you're a 4-to-1 ratio and you're doing with a 10-hour book, that's 40 hours that you have to devote to recording. And you can't do that all in 1 week. You have to divide it up into chunks. People's voices get tired. And so this part is the part I can't control. That is up to the author. You as the author have to commit to doing this and make a schedule and understand that this is going to be the hardest part, is sticking to it. And I listen to people, celebrities, people who have spoken about recording their audiobooks, and I have never heard one talk about, oh, that was easy. Oh my God, it was incredible. It was so easy. It's never easy. It's a difficult process for everyone, for the professional, especially for someone who isn't a professional. And on my end, as post-production, I have to put in the hours. It's a lengthy process. I work full days, 5 to 6 days a week. And that is a very important part, is just sticking to it. and making sure that it gets done. You get the point. Make a schedule and stick to it. And if you do all those things, if you get a room, get it set up correctly, choose your mic, learn the basics of your software, and that is something I would do with the author. All of this is stuff I would work with the author to accomplish. If you do all of that, you will. Then turn your audio to the editor. I forgot about this slide. Okay, so once you finish your audio, I get it, the editor. And I go through the audio and edit it to perfection. I'm going to format it according to the specs of most all audio publishing companies, and there's certain kinds of spacing they like, etc. Levels need to be a certain level for it to be accepted. The audiobook editor is going to be proofing the sound against the script. So what I do is I listen, I edit, I also make corrections. There are pronunciation errors. There are mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes and inconsistency between the sound and the text. Forgotten paragraphs, forgotten sentences, noise that interferes, but a pickup report is created. I also run the audio through a digital proofing system so that anything that I missed will be picked up by the digital system. And basically you'll get, as the author, you'll get a report of all inconsistencies. And because this is author narration, you can make a decision. Is it okay? Is it not okay? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Once those corrections are made and recorded, they're inserted into the final audio, and then you get to go through the audio again for a final pass to make sure everything is the way you want it to be. And any corrections after that will be inserted. Now, the audio is mastered, which means the audio that's already sounding good, because we already got the room and we got the mic and we got the hydration and all that in order. Once that is finished, then there's the mastering, and the mastering brings everything up to another level of perfection. So the sound will be improved, the levels will be perfected, and then your audiobook is finished. We gave it a finish, and it's finished. So that is what I wanted to share, the process of creating an audiobook and seeing it through to the end, because it's a very challenging process, making an audiobook. It is not easy. And when I was talking to my sisters about doing this presentation, I said, I'm going to tell them that it's hard. I'm going to tell them this is hard work. This is, I say, it's the hard labor of the entertainment industry. This is no joke. And she said, don't tell them that, discourage them. And I was like, no, I feel that when you enter this process, you have to know what you're facing, because you know we're going to get there. We're going to get to the end. We're going to get it right. It's going to be finished, but it's going to take some commitment. And I think an author who has written a book has spent a lot of time getting that book done. I know people who are writing books, and it's a very intense process that takes quite a while. So if you can get through writing your book, you can get through narrating your book and creating your own audiobook. So thank you for joining me. As I said, this is a great thing to do as an author, because your book will be distributed in a different form to a different audience, to people through platforms that simply distribute the work, and people just find it through their love of audiobooks and wanting to find more and more of that particular genre, whatever it is that they're interested in. So if you have any questions or you'd like to contact me, please do at my website, audiobookeditors.com, and we'll get your audiobook finished. Thank you.